So, at the very outset, we see that here the point of view shifts to the first person and the tense in the present, and the new narrator comes up the stairs and enters Fo's room. Fo's room. Fo is the writer, and previously we have learned that Susan Barton tried to understand the narrative of Friday, and she tried in several ways. She tried to teach Friday learning. She tried to teach Friday to read, to communicate, but he failed. Here in these chapters, in the last final and important chapters, we see that Susan Barton and others, they are asleep. They find Friday asleep in the alcove, Susan and Fo asleep in the bed. They get low beside Friday and examines him, listen to his breath. It's almost inaudible. Coming closer, the narrator notices a scar on Friday's neck. A scar on Friday's neck. The scar of a rope or a chain. Here we see a different narrator. She observed that there is a scar in Friday's neck. And what is the scar? That scar might get for having chained for several times or several years. It might be, the scar might be for the cause of rope or the chain. Naturally, we tie animals with rope or chain so that there will have certain scar. The narrator finds Susan's manuscript and begins to read her story from where it opens the first chapter of the novel. She slips from the boat, unable to row anymore, enters the water, and then the narrator starts Susan Barton's story. And what happens at the very beginning? Actually, the story of this Fo starts with the shipwreck. Shipwreck when? The shipwrecked and Susan Barton went to this island where Crusoe and Friday had been living. There in that ship, the chapter proceeds with Susan's story in her voice. But instead of swimming to shore, she goes down under the water into the sea wet. There below is the wreck of a ship. She enters into the dead water of the cabin where all is preserved. So the shipwreck where Susan Barton came first time in this island, where Crusoe and Friday had been living. Look here, Susan Barton always tried to understand the narrative behind the narration. Behind the narration, that means the narration we know from Robinson Crusoe by Daniel Defoe. Susan Barton wanted to go more about that narration. Is it the narration who cut Friday's tongue? What was the previous condition of Friday that was not written in Daniel Defoe's Robinson Crusoe? Susan Barton, being the narrator, always wanted to go beyond narration. Beyond narration means we have a narration, that is Friday, the Negro, they are cannibals, they are animal-like, they are subaltern, they don't have any story to tell, and for this reason they are, his tongue is cut. But what is the story behind it? Susan Barton always tried to uncover the narrative, that means the beyond narration. So the scar also indicates something. What indicates something? That means the subaltern people, they are tortured like animals. Naturally, human beings are not tied with rope or chain. মানুষকে তো রশি এবং চেইন দিয়ে বেঁধে রাখার কথা না, কিন্তু ফ্রাইডের গলায় যে দাগ, সেই দাগটাই কথা বলছে, সেই দাগটাই ন্যারেট করছে, আই স্টোরি অফ টর্চার, ইনহিউম্যান টর্চার বাই দ্য colonial power to the subaltern, that means the subjugated subjects like Friday and all other Negro servants all over the Europe. There is Susan Barton and her captain, bloated and white, floating in their night clothes, their arms stretches up as though in blazings. She passes them and goes on. Under the transom of the stern she finds Friday. Here, in that shipwreck, she also finds. Actually, this is This is the story that Susan Barton wanted to write. And that story, he finds Friday. Where he is? He is on the ground, half buried in the sand. Who? Friday. Friday জাহাজের মধ্যে না, জাহাজের পাশে যেই শোর, সেই শোরে ফ্রাইডেকে অর্ধ মাটির নিচে সমাধিস্থ বালির মধ্যে পুঁতে রাখা হয়েছে। কাকে? ফ্রাইডেকে। And she calls to him, touches his woolly hair, tucks on the chain around his neck. And Friday was kept under the sand up to his wrist, and his neck was tied with a chain or a rope. The narrator tucks the rope and tries to make Friday talk. But this is not a place of words. She says, this is a place where bodies are their own signs. Actually, this is underwater, and the body, in this water, the people can't talk. Rather, the body of Friday can talk many things. Friday couldn't communicate verbally. Friday বলতে পারছে না, কারণ ফ্রাইডেকে মাটির অর্ধেক নিচে পুঁতে রাখা হয়েছে এবং তার গলায় চেন বেঁধে রাখা হয়েছে। ন্যারেটর তার চেন ধরে একটু টান দিল এবং তাকে কথা বলতে বলল। তারপরে ন্যারেটর বলছে, নো, ইট ইজ নট দ্য প্লেস অফ ভার্বাল কমিউনিকেশন. Here, body can talk. Body of whom? Body of Friday. Body of Friday can talk. One indicates things, that is Friday's scar. Friday's neck had a scar, and their own signs. And this is the home of Friday. Friday's body turns and stretches out, but very fantastically. Okay. Whenever the narrator tucks, যে দড়িটা ধরে যখন টান দিল, তখন আস্তে করে ফ্রাইডের বডি একটু নড়াচড়া করছে, মুভমেন্ট করছে, and he stretches and his face to her and towards the narrator. Friday looking towards the narrator, and his skin is tight over the bones. That is that physical appearance is very skinny. That also indicates, previously we have heard, that means body can talk. Even you can talk with tongue, but apart from the tongue, body and the physical appearance can talk. Previously we have seen the scare can talk. That is the tremendous suffering done by the colonial power to the colonialized. In the same way, the body is skinny. That means the skin of Friday's body was tied to the bone. That means there is no muscle. That is the inhuman appearance of Friday we have observed in the last chapter of this novella. She pries on her teeth. That means the narrator tries to look Friday's mouth, and his mouth opens and he emits a stream. Friday didn't have tongue, and whenever the narrator tries to open Friday's mouth opened and tries to blow a strong stream. That means a jharna, panir prabhav, a stream without breath in the water. No breath is there. Without interruption, it flows up through his body. That means Friday was looking towards the narrator, and Friday blows a storm, and the storm gets a wave. A wave comes at first towards the narrator, and next time, and the stream like water, and without interruption it flows through his body and out upon me. The streams like water, like the ocean itself. It covers everything, reaches every soul. soft and cold, dark and unending. It beats against my eyelids, against the skin of face. So goes the final lines of the novel. So Friday blows a storm, and the stream flows in such a way that goes towards narrator face, towards every portion of that shore and every parts of this world, and all encompassing blows towards the every corner of this earth. It means if Friday would have tongue, Friday would say he is suffering. But in Daniel Defoe's Robinson Crusoe, Friday didn't have tongue. But Maxwell Coetzee tried to put Friday's body speak, and the body, especially the Friday's mouth, blows so heavily that got a message towards the all parts of this world. That means that is the narration, and that blows that indicates the unending or the inhuman suffering done by the colonial power to the slaves, like Friday and others. Okay, so Susan descends into the wreck, and the ghost-like figures of Friday is chained, and though truly fantastical, the imagine points to the actual. Actually, there is a combination of reality and fantasy. It cannot happen that the ship will be in the same portion after many years. কয়েক বছর আগে জাহাজটা হচ্ছে এখানে পতিত হয়েছিল, এবং সেই জাহাজ থেকেই এই ক্রুশো, ফো, তারপরে ব্যাসনেট, সুজান বার্টন সবাই এসেছিল। সেই জাহাজের মধ্যে গিয়ে সে ফ্রাইডেকে যে পাওয়া যাবে, এটা তো একটা ইমাজিনেশন, দ্যাট ইজ ফ্যান্টাস্টিক, দ্যাট ইজ দ্য ইমাজিনারি অ্যাসপেক্ট, বাট দ্যাট ইমাজিনারি অ্যাসপেক্টস অফ ফ্রাইডে ইন্ডিকেট সাম অ্যাকচুয়াল ইনসিডেন্টস, দ্যাট ইজ দ্য কম্বিনেশন অফ fantasy and realism. The combination of fantasy and actual happened to Friday. Okay, so that's the fantasy. The actual Friday of the wrecked slave ship is the man who went down in chain and the one at the bottom of the ocean. But what of the fantasy of Coetzee that the body itself can speak? That is, what is the fantasy? Okay, you can suppress someone's story like Friday's story, cutting his tongue, but you can't suppress the truth. That was Coetzee's desire with this metafiction. Metafiction means fiction, not like fiction, but apart from the fictitious narrative, Coetzee tried to indicate the actual history happened to Friday. Okay, so Coetzee, that body itself can speak, that owns themselves are vocal. Owns themselves are vocal. What is the owns? That means Friday had owns in his neck. And what are the owns about? The owns are about the scar of having chained for a longer period of time. দীর্ঘদিন ধরে দড়ি বেঁধে রাখার কারণে তার এখানে যে দাগ পড়েছে, সেটাও আসলে কথা বলতে পারে। সেই দাগই আসলে বলছে যে আসলে ফ্রাইডের টাং কে কেটেছিল। ফ্রাইডের টাং কি তারা স্লেভ ট্রেডারেরা কেটেছিল, যারা তাকে বিক্রি করে দিতে গিয়েছিল ওখানে, তারা কেটেছিল, না ক্রুশো নিচে অথবা রবিনসন ক্রুশো নিজে কেটেছিল? দ্যাট অলসো ইন্ডিকেটস দ্যাট মিনস Friday the traders would sell slave to Robinson Crusoe. That might get, but that indicates that who cut Friday's tongue, that indicates that the Friday chained for a longer period, and Friday was tortured by Robinson Crusoe. So it hints a little bit that Friday was tortured, and maybe Friday's tongue might be cut. Actually, cutting of the tongue is symbolic. That means to suppress the story of the Negro slaves. Okay, but Coetzee's intellectual endeavors is to uncover the narratives behind narratives of Robinson Crusoe. What is Coetzee doing by imagining that the trauma of the Middle Passage, who is Middle Passage, that has rendered Friday mute, is somehow being rectified by a new corporal language. Corporal language means bodily language. Corporal means bodily. Corporal language. Middle Passage was the stage of Atlantic slave trade, in which millions of enslaved Africans were transported to the Americans as part of the triangular slave trade. So Middle Passage indicates the slave trade. That means African slaves were transported to European countries and they started living their life as slaves. That is the Friday. So Friday is mute. It's somehow being rectified by a new corporal language. What is the new corporal language? That means body can talk. With the fantasy, the blue যেই স্ট্রিম ফ্রাইডের মুখ থেকে বের হয়ে আসলো, সেই স্ট্রিম মনে হয় সারা বিশ্বকে জানান দিয়ে গেল যে কি টর্চার তারা সহ্য করেছিলেন তাদের কলোনিয়াল পাওয়ারদের কাছ থেকে। Okay, so the corporal language, a new corporal language making the body legible. The sound might be audible, okay, but body can be legible, making the body legible. You can read পাঠ যোগ্য। আমরা বডিকেও পাঠ করতে পারি এবং বডি দেখেও বুঝতে পারি যে আসলে always face might be the index of mind, indicates here that kinds of corporal language came into broad daylight by John Maxwell Coetzee, that body can talk, body can communicate, body can hint something that is legible. Okay, the wounds legible, not just mute. That is indicates. Is this the kind of recuperative fantasy and predicted on idea that such a language could be possible? Okay, so can it be possible? Can it be possible in rhyme of the ancient mariner, the death of a lying man? The dead man can stare. সেই রাইম অফ দ্য অ্যানসিয়েন্ট মেরিনারে এটা কি সম্ভব যে একটা মৃত মানুষ একজনের দিকে চোখ মেলে তাকিয়ে থাকবে? That was not possible. That is the suspension of disbelief. Okay, that means can it be possible that the Kushu with his cut tongue can have the blow like a stream? But it cannot be. But with that fantastic and imaginative explanation, folk, especially Coetzee, was able to put the narration. What is the narration? What is the story behind Friday's cut tongue? Okay? So, or more actually, the readers might become literate in the tongue, in that tongue. While Coetzee may not be attempting to say literature might redeem slavery or colonialism. So with what? What's the result of literature? Literature will make you conscious about something. Literature can't redeem colonialism. The bad effect of colonialism, a suppressive effect of the colonialism cannot be redeemed by James Maxwell Coetzee's literature form. এই নোভেল দ্বারা সেই কলোনিয়ালিজমকে তো সংশোধন করা যাবে না। But the way, what is the thing? He is surely saying something about the novelist's role in seeking out means to represent voiceless bodies. Okay, so Coetzee tried to explain that yes, the novelist can tell more behind the narrative. Novelist can find out the truth behind Friday's cut tongue. Okay, so, and at the end of the novel he attempts to give the subaltern the power to speak. How? Bodily scare and with the blow, and also the skinny body. Okay, the subaltern means suppressed. Okay, and these people they have the subaltern power to speak. He puts a substance in Friday's mouth and moves out of it like water. It flows up through his body and out upon me. It passes through the cabin, through the wreck, washing the cliffs, shores of the island. It runs northward and southward to the ends of the earth, soft and cold, dark and ending. Okay, so this is where the novel ends. That means John Maxwell Coetzee tried to put subaltern speak, and by giving subaltern the power of speaking, John Maxwell Coetzee tried to explain the narration beyond narration. What is the narration? In Daniel Defoe's Robinson Crusoe, Negro are Caliban, Negro are illiterate, Negro are being civilized by colonial power, and all this narration was changed. And what is the narration? That means the skinny body of Friday, the scar on Friday's neck, and his bodily blow indicates that the Friday was tortured. Not the Friday, the lots of the numerous number of slaves, they were tortured by the colonial power. Though they said that Friday's subjugation was beneficial for Friday, that was their narration. তাদের ব্যাখ্যা ছিল যে ফ্রাইডেকে যদি তারা লেখাপড়া মানে তাকে যদি আশ্রয় না দিত তাহলে স্লেভ ট্রেডাররা হয়তো তাকে মেরেই ফেলতো। এজন্য ফ্রাইডের সাবজুগেশনটা ফ্রাইডের জন্যই ভালো ছিল। এটা ছিল হচ্ছে post colonial narration. That narration was changed by John Maxwell Coetzee. That means that is not the narration. Actually, everybody should speak, everybody should have their story, and especially the novelist function, novelist action is to get out, is to uncover the truth, is to uncover the story behind the story, and that is the reason this folk can be called a meta-fiction. Fiction, meta-fiction, that means meta-narration. Meta-narration, meta means beyond narration. What is happening behind the actual story. The voice he gives to the subaltern resembles the ocean itself. It is all encompassing. It is all encompassing and reaches everything. But is this a fair voice? Is this not overtly poetic and ambiguous and another form of silencing? Of course, though there can be no singular and correct way of representing those who can't speak. Actually, okay, it is fantastical, it is imaginary, it cannot be truth that Friday will be speaking like this. But next time, John Maxwell Coetzee tried to put the question that is there any other way with whom we can make subaltern speak? That is the way John Maxwell Coetzee invented and discovered that the subaltern will have the power to speak, and through this power of speaking, the subaltern will tell their actual story. Okay, so that is about the 4th chapter of this novel, and very quickly we will go about some other aspects of this novel. Okay, and we will finish exactly at 1 p.m. There are many symbols, allegory and motifs. Actually, the tongue is the symbol. As you know, that is, the tongue is one of the strongest symbols in the novel, representing the power of speech and truth. Actually, the power of speech. What is the power of speech? Actually, with the tongue, we will try to test the smell of foods or like that. Okay, but tongue will make you speak. At the same time, tongue will help someone to uncover the truth, to get the actual things, the speech, the truth and the narrative. Friday's lack of tongue is more than a physical handicap. The effect of having his tongue removed is spiritual and psychological. As we have said, জিহ্বা মানুষের কথা বলার গুরুত্বপূর্ণ অঙ্গ, তারপরেও গুরুত্বপূর্ণ অঙ্গ। আমি একজন ডেন্টিস্টকে জিজ্ঞাসা করলাম যে দাঁত দিয়ে কি আমরা খাবারের টেস্ট অনুভব করতে পারি? বললেন ন। তাহলে দাঁতটা কিসের জন্য দরকার? দাঁতটা হলো চাবানোর জন্য দরকার। তো জিহ্বা দিয়েই কিন্তু আমরা টেস্ট অনুভব করতে পারি, কিন্তু এই খাবার বাদ দিয়ে জিহ্বার আরও একটা কাজ হলো to get the things, actual things come to light. Okay, so for Friday's tongue, as I have said, it is symbolic, and it is spiritual and it is psychological to suppress the truth. Okay, so that is the symbol, and transforming into someone whose story is forever unknown. Cutting the tongue indicates that always Friday's story will be suppressed, will be unknown forever. For this reason, cutting of the tongue is very spiritual and psychological. And the removal of the tongue in this way stands for the silencing of the history of abuse. The way Friday was tortured, the way Friday was abused, that can also be suppressed by cutting the tongue. So by cutting the tongue, it indicates that is suppressing the truth, suppressing the abuse, suppressing the torture, and suppressing the history of colonialism and post-colonialism, suppressing the history of the Negro slave trade through Middle Passage. That is thing. And repressed female history, that is another allegory. The broad narrative of the novel, in which the unknown female castaway survives harrowing trials, works as an indirect allegory for the female version of the history. There would be a male version and the female version of the history. The foe always tried to describe the story of Susan Barton about his life in Brazil, her life in Brazil. সবসময় বলছে যে আমি আসলে চাই হচ্ছে কিভাবে সুজান বার্টন ব্রাজিলে গিয়ে একা একা একটা মেয়ে দিনাদিপাত করলো, এই স্টোরিটা উনি চাচ্ছিলেন। কে চাচ্ছিলেন? ফো, যে কিনা লন্ডনে মানুষের কনফিউশন শুনে গল্প লেখে। কিন্তু সুজান বার্টন অলওয়েজ সেড নো, I will not tell that. I want to uncover the story of Friday. That is the female version. Okay, and that can also be called the post-feministic version. And the post-modernist version and the post-feminist version will go for the meta-narrative. Here, female cannot tell the actual story. The female novelist and the others. So the female version of his story, it is indirect because it functions through the meta-scope of the novel. Meta-scope of the novel. Female version then means always the Robinson Crusoe was written by whom? Daniel Defoe. Daniel Defoe is a male, so we can say that is the male version. Friday's story in Robinson Crusoe, that can be called the male version. That means Daniel Defoe's version. Here, Foe's story can be the female version. Okay, that is also the meta-scope of the fiction. Okay, so it is by inserting a female view of things, whenever Susan Barton understood that Friday didn't have tongue. At that time, Susan Barton got traumatized and she couldn't understand how it is possible that a human being will cut another human being's tongue. It is a So that is the view, how a female view of things into an iconic classic male narrative. And we are able to glimpse a female view of history and to consider the broader effect of its suppression. And without the female perspectives, Robinson Crusoe is the masculine and colonial fantasy. So Robinson Crusoe represents a history of colonialism. যদি জন ম্যাক্সওয়েল কোয়েটজি যদি এই ফো না লিখতেন, তাহলে ফ্রাইডে যে গল্পটা এটা আমরা জানতাম, এটা যদি না জানতাম তাহলে কোন স্টোরিটা স্ট্যান্ড আউট করতো? ড্যানিয়েল ডেফোর স্টোরিটা স্ট্যান্ড আউট করতো। সেটা কি? ম্যাক্সওয়েলাইন স্টোরি অ্যান্ড দ্য ফ্যান্টাসি, কলোনিয়াল ফ্যান্টাসি, দ্য কলোনিয়ালিজম, দ্য স্টোরি অফ কলোনিয়ালিজম that is not based on fact, and that is the colonial fantasy. That we say. So with the female suppressed voice, John Maxwell Coetzee tried to put lights on the female version of the story, and that challenges the male version of Daniel Defoe's colonial fantasy. That is another allegory. Storytelling, that is the construction of the stories, recurring motifs in the novel, and how they are built, who builds them. So these are the things. Storytelling, the islands of course are symbol. Okay, and through Susan begins to reminiscence about her time there. The islands in Coetzee's novel doesn't work in the way, and that it works in Defoe's novel as an idealized space it is a utopia outside the civilization and the human society where a man can run to live primitively. The island in four works instead of interrogate and deconstruct that classic island of symbolism. Without John Maxwell Coetzee's foe, Daniel Defoe's island became a iconic and classic place. There, Robinson Crusoe will be the leader and Friday will be the servant. But with that symbolic presence of this island, John Maxwell Coetzee put indirect or the alternative or the beyond narrative. Crusoe is shown to be an antisocial, if not mildly tyrannical, devolving into demential. The wind is incessant, and all there is to eat the same bitter lettuce and the fish every day. The only person for whom the island life is arguably preferably is Friday, who has no place in the society of captors. Susan thinks more than once, and he would have been better off left on the island. Crusoe didn't want to leave the island. Why? They had only two kinds of eating: lettuce, bitter lettuce, and the fish. Still, Crusoe didn't want to leave the island. Crusoe সেই island ত্যাগ করতে পারেনি কেন? Because he had the primitive position and he has the kingly position over there. Only Crusoe's voice will be there in the island, and for this reason, Crusoe had the power to dominate others. Crusoe became the king of the island, and there are only two subjects. One, দুইজন প্রজা, একজন ফ্রাইডে আর একজন হলো Susan. Cannibalism, that is also another motive. Okay, cannibalism is a colonial fantasy that the Negro, the black people are Caliban, but we didn't have any indication that Friday is a Caliban. Okay, and so these are the symbols, and also we see some metaphors or similes are there. Okay, Friday is as a scared horse, that is another simile. Okay, and also a conversation or embrace, solitary woman in the frightened prey. Okay, so you will read these are the simile, and also for there will have some irony. After asking Crusoe every question she can thinks to ask and getting little in return apart from the inane and illogical answers, Susan reflects that Crusoe rescued will be a deep disappointment to the world. The idea of the Crusoe on the island is better than the true Crusoe, tight-lipped and sullen in an alien England. So there is some irony. Okay, slaver logic and truth, that is the irony. Another irony, actually, the Robinson Crusoe's Friday and the Robinson Crusoe's story cannot be the actual story. The actual story that we get from John Maxwell Coetzee, and for this reason John Maxwell Coetzee performed the novelist's duty to uncover the truth. Okay, though John Maxwell Coetzee understood that a novelist can redeem colonial suppression. John Maxwell Coetzee also understood that through writing novels, colonialism and the history of the colonialism will be erased from the history of the civilization. Rather, with such kind of writing, the writer, especially the novelist, they can uncover the truth. Okay, so these are the things in force imagery. There will have some imagery. Friday's blackness, that is the imagery, and Crusoe's terraces, that is the imagery. Crusoe 12টা টেরাস করেছিল কোথায়? সেই আইল্যান্ডে অনেকগুলো, সেখানে সে শস্য চাষ করবে এই জন্য অনেকগুলো টেরাস করেছে। কেন? কোনো কারণ নেই, কিন্তু সেগুলোই ইমেজারি দিয়ে সে ইন্ডিকেট করতে চাচ্ছে যে অ্যাকচুয়ালি হি উইল বি 12টা টেরাস করেছে এবং প্রত্যেকটা হাইট হলো মানুষের মতো। একটা পাথর দিয়েছে এর উপরে সে শস্য চাষ করবে, ওকে, that is also the imaginary Crusoe as a king. That is also, that means where I have said, that means Crusoe was the king of the island and he was the king only, and the two subjects Friday and Susan Barton, and Friday's owned another imagery, okay. So these are the things relating to Crusoe. So what kind of writing it is? It is metafiction, or you can say allegory. Metafiction or allegory. Fiction, there will have a narrator will be there, but we have seen that narration is not the singular way, in diversified way. That for this reason Fu can be called a metafiction, and that can also be called allegory, and the setting is 18th century. And narrator and point of view, first person narration, and epistolary, that means the form of letters. In novel you will not see any letters, but in this novel Susan Barton wrote many letters to Fu, okay, in order to write his story down, okay. And for this reason such kind of novel can be called epistolary. That means novel in the form of letters. Novel in the form of letters. That you will see many letters. It would be very much good that if you could read the whole novel. So if you get time, you will see the whole novel. That is ironic, self-reflexive, and philosophical. And Susan Barton is the protagonist. Okay. So these are the things. Some question you can might have a talk about the. For your brainstorming, why Mount Coetzee have wanted to revisit Robinson Crusoe? What is the reason? For couldn't get another thing for revisit. What topics and themes of the original novel is he interested in? Okay, Robinson Crusoe is a long, vast novel, but which portion attracted interest by John Maxwell Coetzee? What is the relevance of Susan Barton's voice in the Robinson Crusoe as a narrative? That means Susan Barton's does Friday understand language? Analyze his character, role, and what you imagine in his point of view. Okay. Are we meant to read Susan Barton as an autonomous voice, or she a character being written by the character Fu? Okay. So, and what is happening? How do you interpret the final sentence? What is the final sentence? That is Friday's blow, that all-encompassing stream that covers southward to northward, from shore to shore, from one corner of the earth to the other corner of the earth. If you can put explanation of the final lines of the novel, you can understand and put logical argument of this novel. Okay. Most probably we have explained the final line and you have understood. Okay. So the slides I have read and spoken and explained all are emailed to your email address. Okay. So try to read this in your free time, and from the